Hey there, Kindergarten here today. Did you know that there was a time when we couldn't watch each other through YouTube videos on the internet? Because there wasn't a YouTube, because there wasn't internet, because there weren't computers, because there weren't phones, because there weren't cars, or anything awesome or modern. We call this time history. It wasn't history back then, but nowadays we call it that. Just keep it away from us and away from us. And we venture into it in through books and such. And I've got a stack of historical fiction here written by independent authors that we can explore and talk about this really strange time. Or actually, it wasn't that scary. I just wouldn't want to live there myself. I'm quite happy with my era. Anywho, first off, we have After the Twelfth Night by A.G. Worth. This one's not very strong on the historical elements, but it is a sequel to Shakespeare's novel, which took place in the real world, and so the book does travel back through and visits areas of note in Europe. Do not remember off the top of my head which areas those were, but it was really good. Lots of pirates, mostly an adventure novel. That were like it was good. And next up, we have White Wolf and the Ash Princess by Tammy Lash. This one is not what I was expecting. When I got the book, I thought it was a medieval fairy tale-ish thing, and I wasn't expecting it to be so thick. And so the thickness and it not seeming to be what I thought it did put me off for a little while on reading it. But it turns out that it's actually set more in the age of exploration, the 17th century. And it's about the cruelty white men did to the Native Americans. But unlike a lot of fiction in that area, it neither set about that thing. It's neither an apology letter, nor is it whitewashing it. It's more of they're using that it's a catalyst for a lesson on forgiveness, which was very beautiful, and I highly recommend this book. And next up, we have A Different Kind of Courage by Sarah Holman. And the Revolutionary War is a very fascinating time for me. I don't like a lot of modern-ish historical fiction. I prefer my historical fiction ancient or medieval, but I'm pretty fascinated by the Revolutionary War, just everything that was going on at that time. And this one is about the early half, which we don't see a lot of historical fiction, and most specifically, it's talking about the life of Dr. Joseph Warren, who I had previously only seen covered in Liberty Kids, and I really appreciated a Christian take on him. So it's very good, enough so much that I bought the book from the author after I read it. And it's autographed, this one. I've got multiple autographed books, but yeah, this one's awesome. Next up, this one's a weird one. I have not read this one. I barely know what it's about. All I know is what's on the back of the cover. It's a family saga from 1762 to 1867. And there's pirate ships and Texas frontier. Civil War happens. But I do need to read it someday. But the funny story behind this one is I was attending a local author's fair, and I was walking by the author's table, and he's like, "Hey, do you want a book? Just take it and go read it." And I'm like, okay. Of course, I was busy selling my own books, so I didn't have a chance to read it. So it's been sitting on my shelf. I do need to read it someday, especially since it does seem to be, my area. Might be interesting, but I just haven't yet. I need to. And next up, we have The Return of the Christmas of the Tiltons. which, as I stated, it's mid-19th century, 1851. And while it's not a grand sweeping, this is what's going on at the time, it is a snapshot of daily life, especially when it's disrupted by murder. So it was a lot of fun. You can very much feel the era in it. I very much liked it for that. Next up, we have A Return of Suit and Suitability. Yes, last day for this one, I promise. But it's a really good book. Sense and Sensibility set in the Depression era. I mean, as I stated with the other book, I don't care much for a lot of modern history, but Suit and Suitability really brought the Depression era to life, and I really enjoyed seeing Ellen and Marianne's story in this era, and it translated remarkably well. And now I really, really, really want to go read the other 4 books in the series, but I haven't just haven't on it yet. Especially since one of them is by Sarah Holman, the one Emma, which is also my favorite of the Jim Austen novels. So we'll do that. I just don't have it. And then finally, to finish it off, we have Tracking Ruby by Jessica Grayson, which is a Western about Sophie here, who is a deputy in her because her father's the sheriff, and she's pretty much the only person she can trust. So she's a deputy, and then gets caught up in this adventure to find the cousin of the person. So that's my historical fiction. Oh, forgot about. I also have only a novel, which is about I forget what era of the late 19th century, 1881 here. So this one's about the turn of the century and the change of life, what's going on then. So that one's also pretty good. I recommend all the books except for The Right Family, which maybe after I read it, I'll recommend it. Anywho, historical fiction, awesomeness. One word before I close out this video, though. There will not be a video tomorrow, and it's because I took inventory of my bookshelves looking for contemporary indie fiction, and all I found were my own 2 portal novels and portal fantasy, and my Inkulin, which is about a girl's imagination in the modern world. So the only other one I have is one I'm borrowing that I'm not sure is quite modern. It might be contemporary, but it's also a portal fantasy. So I really don't have anything to show off that I won't talk a lot more about with fantasy. So I'm going to be skipping contemporary video and will instead be doing a top 10 list on my blog, because all of my contemporary is digital, and I will show it off there because there is some awesome contemporary out there and awesomeness. Let me know your favorite historical fiction in the comments below. Kendra out.